Welcome to Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zellman. Our guest today is Jim Bovard. He's the author of a new book called Attention Deficit Democracy. He's also the author of Lost Rights and numerous other books. Our subject today is going to be, what is democracy? What is happening to America? And what can we do to save the country? Let me just start by reading a few comments from Jim's book, and I think you'll have a better grasp of where we're going to go today. Many Americans no longer value freedom enough to make any effort to understand government or political action. If people choose not to think, then they have chosen to submit. If people choose to make no effort to understand the machinations of government, then they have chosen to be political victims. If people choose to disregard past lies and abuses, they choose to sacrifice themselves to the next liar and abuser. Jim, just one more little comment that you have here in the book, and then we'll get started. I think this really sums up what's been going on for the last 50 years, I suppose. You say liberty has been at the wrong end of the shooting gallery for decades, and the political assaults have been intensified during the past two presidencies. So with that, Jim, tell us what's on your mind with this book, Attention Deficit Democracy.
Aaron, thanks for having me on the program. I really appreciate this. With Attention Deficit Democracy, I'm trying to wake up people to how the combination of mass ignorance, fear-mongering by the government, and lying politicians is putting our entire system of government into a death spiral. There's been so much power concentrated, there is no leash on that power anymore, and it is Americans face the situation that this power is gaining momentum with each passing year, with each presidency.
Let's go through some of the abuses of power that you see, and perhaps some ways to get our power back. As they say, power to the people.
Okay. Something that you and JPFO have done a lot on is the need for a Bill of Rights culture in this country. And it's unfortunate that Americans are no longer aware of what the Constitution says and what their rights are. And because of that, they're often very passive about what happens when the government violates those rights. This has become clear with property rights. The government's been permitted to confiscate private property left and right on the shadiest of pretenses, and it's happening as well with the recent controversy about government warrantless wiretaps of Americans here in the U.S. The Bush administration pretends that the Fourth Amendment doesn't say anything about probable cause or a warrant. Instead, as long as some government official thinks it's reasonable, then the government's entitled to invade your privacy, and that's the kind of rewriting of the Bill of Rights which poses a grave peril to Americans.
Do you think most politicians are aware of the Bill of Rights? And I'm not trying to be flippant. Do you think they actually learned about them while they were in school?
They might have learned about it in government schools, but I mean, it's one of the great tragedies of the U.S. that most people learn most of what they know about the government from the government, and if that's not a self-evident conflict of interest, I don't know what is. Some politicians are aware of the Bill of Rights. It seems that the opposition party is far more likely to invoke it, to wave it in the air. This is what we saw from a lot of Republicans during the Clinton administration, and we're seeing the same from Democrats under Bush. And some of the folks on both sides might be sincere, but it does seem as if it's only the opposition that cares about the Bill of Rights most of the time.
Well, so it seems. You've written that lies have been the key factor in the expansion of government. How has government become so dishonest, and why are Americans so blasé regarding the lies that our rulers tell us?
Americans have forgotten that politicians are dangerous, that politicians as a class are dangerous, that people who are seeking power over us are not by definition our friends. And yet, if you look at some of the recent history as far as the lies that politicians have gotten away with, from Lyndon Johnson lying about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, to Nixon lying about the secret bombing of Cambodia, to Jimmy Carter lying about the Shah of Iran being a progressive, enlightened ruler, to George H.W. Bush lying about the justifications for the first Gulf War, to Clinton lying about Kosovo and the bombing of Belgrade. Entire generations of Americans have come of age since the ancient time when a president's power was constrained by a duty of candor to the American people.
There's a number of comments you have in your book that I find fascinating. Let me just go through a list that we put together. You say, rather than a democracy, we increasingly have an elective dictatorship. People are merely permitted to choose who will violate the laws in the Constitution. This
is the case if the president is permitted to be above the law, then we no longer have a republic. We no longer have rule of law, and any notion of equality before the law is lost when the president is above the law. And yeah, that's what's been happening in this country. That's what's been expanding president after president, and most people either don't recognize it or don't care.
Well, on that note, I have a question for you. If we continue along the current path where people don't know or don't care, what would you guess will be the future of this country in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now?
People would have even less free speech. People would have less privacy from the government. People would have less security against government intrusions. It would be easier for government to confiscate people's land, to confiscate people's bank accounts, to pilfer their email. And who knows how many foreign wars might be started. Who knows how many other camps like Guantanamo might be set up in other places around the world or here in the U.S.
That's scary. You also mentioned that Washington policy debates are often like a criminal trial in which all the evidence of the defendant's past offense is ruled inadmissible.
You know, it's interesting seeing how the media and the political parties argue issues in D.C., because on so many areas there is a long history of government failure and of politicians lying. And yet, with each new expansion of government power or each new foreign intrusion, it is as if we are obliged to assume that the government is honest and competent. It is as if we are obliged to assume that the government is only doing what it says it's doing. One example, Bush, talking about these National Security Agency warrantless wiretaps, Bush has said, well, it was only people linked to Al-Qaeda. Well, you know, it's fascinating to me that so many people would actually assume that's the case, because Bush's comments on the Patriot Act, Bush's comments on a lot of other aspects of the war on terrorism have been shown to be false. And yet, here's a case where the president is openly stating and practically bragging that he's ignoring the U.S. Constitution, and we're supposed to assume that he's only doing it for good.
Well, following up on that, you use a term, the battered citizen syndrome. You say the more debacles government produces, the more voters cling to faith in their rulers. I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting how the federal government is exploiting public fear to redefine the relationship between the rulers and the American people. White House Chief of Staff Andrew Carty, given a talk at the GOP convention in September 2004, he praised George Bush's role as a protector of the nation, and he assured the GOP delegates that this president sees America as we think about a 10-year-old child. I know as a parent I would sacrifice all for my children. Now, it's hard to imagine a more condescending comment. I mean, this is even more condescending than the stuff we heard from the Bill Clinton administration. And yet this generated almost no controversy. Part of the reason that the government fear-mongering is succeeding is because so many people are so ignorant that it's easier for government to frighten people into submission.